Yes, I did have a chance to talk to Les.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, went back and was reading some people and he was one.
Hmm,
Yeah,
I should have popped it to. Yeah.
He's lived in a volunteer to be one of the committee
Okay.
members.
Hmm.
And he's and you can say that. Just that. And to
Actually, I'm surprised.
get a little chuckle out of him.
I thought he might.
I said, definitely not.
You can't stay away.
I know, I told him that. I saw him on the last meeting. He said that.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Carol.
We're ready.
We are
Okay.
ready.
Are we need to order? 4 o'clock? Right on time. Is the agenda look okay? Anything you want to pull from the agenda? If not, can you have a motion to approve?
I move approval of the agenda as is.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have minutes of the February 13th meeting. Are there any changes? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
I move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any public comments at this time?
No public comment.
All right, let's move on to old business.
Okay, so, before you are several policies for consideration. The first one is BOD two, elections and appointments of board members. And so at our last policies committee meeting, we had discussed and directed staff to come back with a proposed option for how to do board member elections versus appointments, rotations, etc. So what we did was looked at some options and we incorporated into this draft for committee consideration. And essentially, it's a rotation that would start with the zone one board member, president, and then board or zone two as vice president, secretary, zone three, zone four treasurer, and then each year they would rotate. And the only exception to that would be in an election year where, say, for example, if it was zone three, that would be rotating from vice president to president. If zone three was a newly elected director, they would not be president that year, but that zone would rotate and shift to the bottom of the sequence. So no, they would always be in sequential order, 1 through 7, but that they would rotate. So that's the example that's included in this this policy. Open for your thoughts and discussion. So it's not a recommendation from staff. It's
Thank you.
yeah, it's an example of how the policy could work if it's accepted that way.
Mhm. I've noticed that the other organizations that have rotating, like rotating mayors and things like that, this is what the style of.
That, yeah, there's
Right,
similarity to
yeah.
that. And the one thing is, you know, that a lot of municipalities, et cetera, typically they just have the 5 council members or board members where we have 7. So, you know,
Right.
so we potentially have a longer cycle
Right,
to rotate
right.
through with 7.
Mhm. And I don't know if it's on there, I didn't see it, but I did a speed reading. Is there, if a director just declines to serve, is there a way to just?
We could incorporate that in
Incorporate
there
that,
if they decline to
Mhm.
pass, then they would rotate.
Right.
Yeah, so we could include that
Yeah.
language.
Any other comments?
I decided about that one, so I agree with that one.
I don't like the first two bullet points. I think it seems like very reactionary to the situation that we have now. It doesn't seem like it fits. I think if I would prefer to start with bullet point number 3, and then to replace the last two words that should be based on seniority. And then the rest of it seems to be okay, but I do have a question about how do we treat the treasurer? If it would just be like a normal position or,
Yeah, it would rotate just like the other offices
Okay.
would, so.
Mhm.
And this is just kind of the simplest
Mhm.
version. I think if we get into, more of like, okay, does the treasurer stay in the treasurer position? And then they don't have opportunity to rotate. I think it just kind of throws it off.
I agree. I think we should have that person have the opportunity to move around because even though there's some of us that have a greater expertise in finance, that person is probably going to be on the finance committee. And whether he or she is the probably will be the committee chair, but if not, then it's fine. So long as he or she is contributing, we're gonna benefit from that expertise. And we have our CAO and, our CEO that are really the ones that are the experts in that area. We don't really expect the treasurer to be doing the work of
Mhm.
the CAO. So I think that treasurer should have the opportunity to be president.
Mhm. Well, this is gonna go before the board
Mhm.
anyway. So
Yeah.
I think that can be up for discussion.
Yeah, definitely. With,
Okay.
after we give our input and we
Mhm.
decide that just like the being able to decline, as I stated in the past, in order to get this ball rolling and putting it into place. I know I would prefer to decline my next rotation because I want us to get us into this system. So that's my intention. So that's why I'm glad you brought that up.
Mhm.
And when you said start with the third bullet point, so you're talking about where it says annually each zone director will continue to rotate. So where do you
Based on
start?
seniority right there. So right now, after this year, who has the highest seniority?
After this
Oh,
year.
so you're saying starting
Start
with
with
the
next
person
year.
that has the
Let's start with
highest
the one.
senior. So whatever that zone is, if it's zone, say 5 or whatever, then that would start the sequence.
Yeah.
So 5, 6, 7, and then 1.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option, obviously,
Mhm.
based on the committee.
Right, let's bring it up for board discussion.
Mhm, sure.
But
So
you
that-
would like to
I would
present
like to
that
start it,
language
Yeah,
in
and
the
Letty can make
draft.
that
of the-
recommendation at the board meeting.
Okay, so it would be, okay, so we will.
Well, I would
update
like to
the
have your comments on this to see
Right,
what you
yes.
think and have a recommendation by the committee.
Committee, exactly.
Well, our zones that are new is the 1 and 3, no, 5. Which zones are the new elected?
Greg is on 2, correct?
He's on
One.
1.
1, okay.
You're zone 2.
I'm
One and-
zone 2.
Isn't it 1 and 5?
1 and 3, because
Mhm.
Greg was 1, Dan is 3. And then Arthur is 5. And we were 7.
Is there any way that we can start the other way around, like 7 first and then 6?
Well, we don't want
and then
to,
5?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just saying 7, 6, and 5, because they're the older ones on the board.
Okay, so again, if it is 7, I'm gonna decline. So then it would be after me.
So the most senior, I think, is Carol, right?
Yeah, and I would decline.
Or yeah. So,
So then the second most senior would be you.
decline.
Next most senior would be Arthur, which I think, my guess is that's a decline, I'm not sure.
Why don't we just start with 6?
But I think he still deserves the,
Seniority to start.
just being able to go through, giving him the same opportunity as everybody else.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like the seniority idea.
Just to start with. But then we keep it in the zone sequence.
Yes, in the zone sequence that whoever, if, like you explained here later on, if somebody comes in new, then that person
They would not be eligible
until
for
then,
president.
until the
Any other office, if they're new, they could serve in the office that year. I just have it in there as president. So for example, if it's a new director, kind of like what Greg was this last
Mhm.
year, he was a new director, but he was able to serve as vice president.
Mhm.
So, but if that zone is in the rotation to say be vice president and are newly elected, they would be eligible to serve as vice president.
Well, shouldn't
Only
we
the
put the
president.
vice president as the second most seniority? That way it's leading up, because then those two people are working together in that year.
But
So,
that, that takes it out of the sequence of the, because you can't have both seniority and
No,
zone
seniority-
zone
no, it's
sequence.
just based on seniority. But the most, the highest number of years that a person has is president. And then the person that has that's gonna be the next, that has the second most seniority is gonna be vice president. And so really those two are the ones that should be,
Well, what a,
but if he or she loses and that person gets out of the system and then the next person goes up. So it's always based on seniority.
so how do you, go ahead.
Would that mean though, that the most senior director would always have a chance at president? So if they opted to continue to do that, as long as they continue to be elected, they would be automatically president for
No,
however many
no.
years could be.
So
There's
that,
only 1 year that they can serve. They serve 1 year, they go to the end, and then it's again based on seniority.
so then what if you have election and you have somebody that was senior person then that either didn't run or is voted off, but that zone was next to rotate into one of the officer positions. Now you got a brand new,
That director is no longer considered after all. So the next person who has the most seniority is gonna be moving up. You're not considering the person that's no longer there. It's just the most senior continues to move up to vice president and president. I think that's kind of the system that we're trying to create with having the president and the vice president. To all, the vice president to be able to move into that role and being able to be part of the executive, sessions or preparing the agendas, always having the most senior president, the second most senior is vice president. If that person, the vice president, chooses not to run or is not elected, then that person is just removed and the most senior after that moves up to become president. But that's somebody's already had probably 3 years of, at least 3 years of serving.
so what I see in that sequence is the potential, you're looking at somebody that never gets to serve.
Yeah, well, there's 7 of us, so yeah,
Right.
unless you serve 2 terms, then you likely will have an opportunity to serve. And that is really validation that you have really been part of the district for a while. But with having 7 members and you only have, 1-year terms, it's not like you're gonna divide it up. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
likely that you may have somebody that will not serve.
What if,
Just like when you have 5 board members and you have, if I have a 4-year term, I may not have an opportunity to serve if I don't win re-election. So
Mhm.
that's,
what if you have 2 directors that have the same seniority?
that's where you need the clarification. And, that's where, if, so that would
They would
be,
just go to the vote by the directors and.
well, you don't want to have it to become,
Yeah.
you want it to be more, that there's a formula to it.
Mhm.
And,
Draw
so,
strong.
Draw straws.
Draw straws.
Yeah, yeah.
It could just be the high,
Closest to the
the,
birthday.
it could be, based on the zone, the, lower number zone or higher number zone, just to make it very objective and that, so it's always,
What's the oldest? No. That will work.
just to be something very neutral that it
Yeah,
could be
I
the.
like your zone number. that, you know,
So it's
you-
based on the zone and rather than the person. But yeah, it's, it should be, that should be the one that's actually a little bit more explained so that there's, well, here's the formula and we could put the problem.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're suggesting then by seniority. So it's not gonna go by zone number at all. It's gonna be by seniority, and then we'd have to build in language that. If they don't want to serve, then they
They can
Rotate.
decline.
decline and rotate to the bottom.
Mhm.
So, Chris, before we get into that detail, so right now the process that we have to have a nomination and then we have to vote on it. Would this replace that or would this put us merely that this is a nomination process? So,
I thought that was the intent.
so this would be the
was to take-
nomination process that we, like, for example, Carol is the most senior member, then I would then recommend Carol be our board president. And then the way we are holding it right now, we have the opportunity to, but then we don't want to put it in that.
Well,
We
but I
want
thought
to
that's
just
what
make
we
it
were
official, right?
trying to get away from.
So this would be,
appointment or election.
so we will
process.
replace the nomination process. This would, okay.
Yeah, it's, whatever's decided
Mhm.
would be, and then it takes out all the subjectivity to it.
Right,
If there's,
yeah.
trying to establish with it, so that there's just a
Yeah.
rotation process and
Mhm.
nobody's feelings are hurt or,
Right.
it's not an
And
election.
in the event that there's a high with seniority on the board, then the person who,
I would say draw straws.
One of the things that I liked in that policy that I shared with you from the Board of Supervisors, I like that if there was the opportunity that there's a responsibility that that person is gonna take on. And if that person doesn't, deserve that opportunity to have that privilege to be, then it says here, specifically, the chair and vice chair must execute their duties with dignity, honesty, and decorum. This must create a forum with healthy debate while maintaining the spirit of cooperation. And they must serve as spokesperson, yada, 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 okay. Even if they personally disagree, okay, well, that's not right. Wasn't there something, I think I only copied the first page, that the board has the opportunity to remove that person if that person is not representing the board with,
athletes or
it's kind of,
something. Yeah.
mm,
I don't know.
no, okay.
It seems like we have something
It's-
like that.
It's
in the
likely not gonna
bylaws
happen,
part of
but
it. I don't remember. As
from the
far as
outside looking
voting
in,
to
Carol, did you
remove
have
them.
it? One time, are we even being recorded?
Mhm.
Okay, forget
Write it down on the piece of paper. Pass it to me.
If there is a board member that is misbehaving to the point that it's being disruptive to the full board,
It seems like we have something
we have
like
something like
that.
that, okay.
Conduct and absences as well.
Conduct, okay,
Yeah, I think it might be in our conduct
Okay.
policy.
so.
I know we've got some language around that, so.
Oh, yeah, that would be just.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so my recommendation, well, my suggestion, your direction, would be to table it and then bring back a new version with what we're discussing now.
I think just bring it to the board.
Well, there's no rush.
I think we got some work to do on this before, because I would hate to I would hate to do policy based on what we're talking and then you guys not be pleased with it,
Got it.
the outcome of it before we go forward. So,
Especially since we don't have a rush to do this and we're not gonna do this until.
Yeah, we're
December.
not until
Correct.
November.
Correct.
Good point. Okay, table it. Is that okay?
okay, so recommendation or
We
a
move to
motion,
continue.
motion to table and bring back next time.
Yeah.
Do we want to see if there's any public comment or?
Is there any public online?
No, but we still need to ask for public, I mean, there may, well, no one's with us. No public comments.
No one.
All right, on to number 2.
Okay, number 2 is the BOD for the appointment to committees. We had brought this to the committee last session and discussion was had around the language added for volunteer community members related to program committee and F&A committee. It was direction of the committee to consider for the program committee to include up to 3 grant application reviewers for the program committee. And the thought would be is to maybe have like a list of multiple program or grant reviewers. And then we can select from them based on, subject matter expert type situations so that we're, and the thought with that is so that we're getting somebody that's reviewing that does have some experience with that subject matter to avoid some of what we had before, where we had people that were weighing in that, yes, they may be passionate about it, but they may not have the expertise or the knowledge to, give that support or
Right.
guidance on. So,
Can we call them expert advisors with, and grant review as part of their job duties? Because that's what we have now.
well, I think we're proposing calling it grant application reviewers, responsible for providing subject matter review and input of grant applications. I mean, we can call them whatever we choose, but they'd be doing the same thing.
Exactly.
So you're proposing, what'd you call them?
Expert advisors, and that's what's already in the policy, that we have expert advisors. And just add that as their job, in their job description. That sounds.
I was wondering, where do we have expert advisors already?
I recall seeing it. Help, anybody?
I remember seeing something too with subject matter.
Subject matter experts, that's what it was.
In this policy, I think, right, or somewhere else?
It was,
The very,
Richard, you remember
the
that,
very
right?
first paragraph lists subject matter experts, but
Everybody's-
I mean, we can call them expert advisors is fine.
So these would be
You guys-
volunteers or would they be paid volunteers?
This policy is proposing as volunteers.
Or a stipend?
Right.
No.
No
Volunteers,
compensation for
right.
Nothing.
No,
volunteers.
no stipend, but maybe expenses.
I think we're
Like
getting
travel
That's
into
volunteer.
Travel expenses.
I'm kind of
To me,
afraid that
To
we're
me, I
getting.
would say, I thought I understood hearing that we were wanting to get community members involved that want to be involved. To me, having them as paid,
Yeah, I
it's
don't
not as much
agree. Yeah,
volunteer.
I don't agree
You
with
know,
that.
but also, well, there's pros and cons to it, and when you
You're
have
right here.
volunteers, if they are giving of their time, and if you pay them, then you are demonstrating that you are valuing their time, and they're more likely to be consistent instead of bringing on new volunteers all the time. So that's a pro to be able to do that, and it doesn't have to be, a big amount, but But if you pay, in my case with RAP, $25 an hour per hour, and then they read like something like that. But it's just, I think that there's a benefit to having a small fee that you pay them. So that you have them continuing on instead of them just doing it for a couple of months and then not doing it. And, you know, I don't think it hurts to have it. What would be the disincentive for not doing it?
To me, go ahead.
I think we may have problems with legal. If we could possibly have legal issues
Like,
paying them. Because we're supposed to, I mean, I don't know.
well, because when I did mine here, my day job, my expertise is that I was actually, it was actually recommended by my HR consultant that I pay them. That I had expectation for work that was being done. And so therefore, they are paid employees.
So you're treating them as a subcontractor.
Not a subcontractor, they're paid by the hour. I actually had to.
You put them on payroll.
Mhm.
So they're like,
So they're part-time employees and they
Employees,
work
yeah.
like maybe 10 hours up to, I think it says up to 10 hours a month or something like that. But it's, maybe I put up to 20.
To me,
Into
that
FOI.
changes the
Just check with the
dynamic.
HR person. Check, because if Yvette is concerned about the legalities of it, check for the pros and cons.
Well, and I can see it, if we are directing them as to what they're doing, then yes, they should probably be put on payroll and compensated. If we're looking at it, and to me, this is the difference in the dynamic with the individual, is if they're doing it of their own free will and they're volunteer, which I thought that was our intent, was to have a volunteer community member that's wanting to engage with, and I think that's what you proposed. Is that they're doing it of their own free will versus it being a paid position that we're directing them what to do, because then I think there's a different, I'm thinking of in terms of if I'm one that is considering doing that position, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm getting paid for this, I have an obligation to do it because they're expecting me to maybe have a different viewpoint on this versus just a volunteer person that is giving their feedback to it.
You know, I'm volunteering as a board member, but I'm getting paid for my time too. So it demonstrates, so that to me doesn't, it adds to why you should actually compensate them to do this. By paying them, you're actually getting them to invest more of their time to give their expertise and be more committed to that job. Because it is, you're asking them to do a job, to give you their input. So that's to me, leads me to actually want to give them a fee for.
Well,
And
yeah,
many of the big organizations, the big grant makers, they pay their readers. So,
But we're a government agency and the city councils don't pay people that
Yeah,
serve
you're
on
right, you're
commissions.
yeah, county doesn't pay their readers.
and we're, I mean, we get paid for
Commission.
supposedly how you say volunteering, but we were also elected to be put on here, you know, and we're part of the government, or say, we're considered part of the government, right? More than a volunteer.
Well, Lenny's suggestion is that we ask our HR people for advice. Can we?
Yeah, I
bring
mean, I
that
can
back
ask,
And bring it back to us at the next meeting?
because I think the key is if you're directing this person to do that, if they're doing it of their own free will and they're volunteering their time, because you could make the argument with the F&A committee as a volunteer community member on that. Would you want to pay them too? I don't see that.
Yeah, well, I think that reimbursement for travel, I think is okay. If we're asking them to show up at the district office to review grants, that would be okay.
You used to give them lunch.
Say again.
You used to give them lunch.
Yeah.
And lunch,
You used to just
Mhm.
lunch.
yeah.
I think trying it out also to see how it goes, in that if you do actually get interest and actually sustain it, because if you don't, just because you don't get it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but that means that how do we get them? How do we get volunteers to give us their time but they also have busy lives. If they're able to do it willingly and not, not expect anything in return, then okay, then don't do it. But if you really are having, to really pound the road to get somebody and looking behind really hard for people, then it means that you have to do something, you have to provide some incentives. And yes, Donna, I agree that, and I like to always, look at how other entities do it, especially governmental that are public, the accountability factor being there. Many of the readers for the county are usually other entities. They are getting paid, like I'm a reader. And so I'm getting paid by my day job, and because I have an interest in the county business, I'm okay with not getting paid by the county. But, but I know that before when I served on the Board of Governance, and they used to have a really hard time finding anybody to serve on that. And then there was incentives because there was all this money to give out, and everybody wanted to be on it. Okay, and then when you have those readers for all of these grants that they read, they struggle to get people to get those. But they look to county people, other people that have a stake in it, that have an interest in that, to actually be readers. But they're not going to get, they're going to get turned down before they get yeses, because I know when I do reading for some of the other funders, you give yourself, I have to read for an hour for an application. That's a lot of time. And it's just, I want to make sure that we have the quality expert matter. And if it becomes a problem, if we're not able to attract that kind, and you're also looking at what is their reason for doing this? Is it because they want, I would like to think that because there's a conflict of interest, they wouldn't be involved in reading things that are somehow that they have a personal stake. So maybe it will work out that we don't have a problem with finding people that are subject matter experts. And we don't need to provide incentives, but if we do have problems finding those subject matter experts, I think we should consider incentives down the road, if it's necessary.
Let's check with our HR people and
And
see
legal
if
counsel.
and legal counsel, and see what their feedback is.
Yeah, because I just think, and I'm thinking from my own perspective, and I'm not, it's a generalization, but I think I have a different mindset if I'm being paid to do something versus just strictly volunteering.
What would be your mindset if you were strictly a volunteer?
I'd be doing it because I wanted to versus if I'm getting paid, I feel like, okay, you know what? I'm doing it for the money, not necessarily for the benefit of contributing to.
Yeah.
That's where I have an issue with it too, because I think that when you volunteer, you're doing it because you really want to do something for your community. You really want to do it because you want to be involved in the change, right? Because that's what we do, right? We create change or whatever. And if you're getting paid, sometimes people take it like, oh, this is a job. I'm just gonna come in, I'm gonna read this, I'm gonna be done, and that's it. So I don't know if the opinions are gonna be.
But
It could be
remember
a
that,
combination of the two.
well, the thing being also is the time commitment. As a volunteer, I can volunteer to do one-day events. I could do maybe once a week. It's on my time. Okay, but if I am getting paid for it, I'm gonna make sure I give you what you need by a certain deadline. So there's a sense of more commitment that, oh, they're paying me for it, so I'm not gonna just when I get around to it, or I won't do it this time. So how much commitment is there as a volunteer? Yes, it comes from the heart, but that is more likely to be very limited to how much time do I have? And how much, and I think there's more commitment as a paid person than as a volunteer.
So are we gonna change the name from volunteer to paid or
No.
employee?
I thought it was subject matter expert.
And actually, it's right here on this, the 1.2.7, it does say.
Okay. Yeah, it would be just committee members if we end up going in that direction. Since we're just exploring this, we haven't decided. We're still weighing the pros and cons, but you're right that if it was turned out to be that we paid them, you know, we'll of course, change that.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Sorry, I just had a question, but go ahead.
Oh, I guess as it was coming up, because in our work with the HR consultant, in terms of something like this, my immediate presumption that they would say, we're essentially creating new positions, which would need to have job descriptions, which are approved by the board, included in the budget. But as we're talking about, or as you're talking about the paid positions, the first thing that jumps to mind is that's what staff does. And I know that was brought up before. And if that doesn't meet those needs, ultimately, it sounds like you're seeking a consultant to provide those additional elements that you don't already have. And the thing that jumps out to mind, as you mentioned earlier, like with the finance side, that's my subject matter expert, that's Chris's subject matter expert, and we happen to be on staff on that. So a part-time staff seems like a step away from potentially just looking at a consultant, because the key here is we're also subject for those, we have a list of, I'm just throwing out numbers, 10 subject matter experts. We're at the whim, not the whim, but we're subject to whomever puts in a grant. There may be 9 of those that aren't needed for 9 months. We wouldn't know. And so a consultant sounds like somebody who might be there regularly, as opposed to if I was going to get a part-time position because it was a low hour commitment and I don't get called for 9 months, I'm like, nah, I'm not into this. Where if it's a volunteer thing, I know, okay, I might not be able to, do something every month, because it's really as those applications come up. So I don't know, just a alternate.
Food for thought.
Yeah, well, let's get some other opinion and come back with, number 2 at the next. policy meeting.
Until we get more input.
And that was my question, but would a part-time person, is that they're gonna be their only role when they're getting paid? Are they involved in other staff?
What I was envisioning was like retired people that are looking to still do something. That what? Yeah, and they get paid for that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have subject matter experts to be able to give you their kind of input, I think there's still a lot more to talk about on this.
There is, because I think it completely changes the dynamics too, from, treating them as an employee, because then you also have the insurance issues you have to deal with.
No, because if they're only that member, the policy you have later on, it says that if they don't qualify based on the plan, then they wouldn't get it. So, yeah, I don't think it would be a problem with that.
No, I'm saying liability insurance, I'm not saying health insurance.
So if you treat them as a subcontractor, and then
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about it.
You'd also have to look at where do they fit into the OP5, the grant process? I mean, okay, so we've got 5 people on the grants team. We all review it. We meet with the grantee. We help them as best as we can to get them so their grant is acceptable and brought forward to the board or program committee. And we score it. Do these subject matter experts come in after we've scored it, or do we wait for their opinion and then we score it and put them in on the scoring? I mean, we gotta wind this into the actual grant process.
I don't think I would lessen my evaluation of the healthcare district staffs. I think it would just be a different perspective to be able to add to it. But if the district staff is rating everything 5s, and this other person is just saying agreeing or disagreeing, but it's just being able to get that perspective that would kind of say, okay, I don't agree with that person, or I agree with that point, but it's just a different perspective.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the list of having like a subject matter. For example, when we were looking at the sponsoring institution, Chris and I relied on somebody that actually has been an SI, has been a DIO, and walked us through the whole thing. So it brought a lot into perspective and clarity what some of the things that we needed to look at in that next grant application that was coming in. But that was a willing person that just said, well, sure, I'll be glad to walk you through the process of what this particular thing looks like. And we do that with a lot of grantees. If we don't quite understand something, we do go out and ask our other grantees. I mean, we talk to other funders and
But to your point about, where does it fit into
something else.
like the OP5 process?
yeah.
To me, it would be part of you know, the grants team evaluation. We hear
So
whatever.
we
the
include them
reading-
in our evaluation.
what the reading is. They're not scoring it, but then the staff would score after they've considered, you know,
Sure.
all the information plus what the reader.
My question is, we were calling them subject matter experts. And if somebody is retired and no longer actively participating in public health or community health, what expertise are they actually bringing to the table?
Maybe the community needs? What do they know about the community that they could add to it? And this is why I think it's different kind of input. It's not to replace the subject matter experts, but just to give you a different perspective from a community member, just like I'm a community member right now. I'm giving you my perspective, and so being able to get that from another person at that level, as the program committee is evaluating and thinking of what should I ask this question before we commit to $300,000 to give, you know, to give them. So just being able to hear what from that different perspective, if there's something that is different, if everything is consistent, if they're not bringing up anything and staff isn't bringing up anything and I don't bring up anything, I guess you're still gonna get those boring committee meetings that are done in 15 minutes, you know, but it's just being able to.
Yeah. Yeah, we've stated that in the past, the rationale for this. Everything.
As we're, or as I'm preparing to work with Chris to incorporate the language on this, because ultimately that's the key, is what the board wants in the language. Yeah, there's just more questions that I would have, you know, if we're bringing in a subject matter expert in that evaluation stage and they're not available, that's the one person. What's the thought there? Because that might hinder the flow of things, where sometimes it can already be a bit of a challenge just with everybody's schedule to get everything going. And I feel like we're really good at getting it as quickly as possible, but would there be, if we have a subject matter expert that's unavailable and then we bring the grant forward like normal, is there going to be questions and why didn't we wait for the subject matter expert? Because that
But
changes.
that's why I think it's so important to pay them, because there is more of a responsibility on their part to do it. That's.
That was
Yeah.
the prior CEO had mentioned why he moved away from it, because he did say that we have paid staff that are doing.
Yeah, well, let's revisit this.
Yeah,
We-
we'll work on it and bring back some, you know, additional revised language if that's the direction of the full committee.
Well, before we move on, we'll go with that, but, I don't think of it as this, you know, the work that we're doing right now. I think of it as we are embarking on our new strategic plan, how we want, you know, we're gonna be very picky on the things that we are going to be considering. Is everything's gonna be falling into these strategies, right? So I think to be able to have, as we are building that system, we want to still be able to demonstrate this inclusiveness, this community broad. We still want to get your input on, you know, that kind of, the way that, how do we build that piece of it into the strategic plan of being open to the voices of the many? So,
Well, we could do
Well-
listening forums throughout the Coachella Valley to, you know, kind of get that feedback as we're developing the strategic plan, just to kind of have those checks and balances. But to bring somebody in, I think, you know, if they don't know anything about, let's say, mental health, right? If it was just a community member, I think, how can they provide insight into what's happening or a grant application that's very technical if they don't have that background? It's almost like,
That's the problem.
you know, so how are they gonna be providing additional insight into this? I would much rather have some listening sessions, some listening forums throughout the Coachella Valley as we get through, you know, the strategic plan, maybe as we have the first draft, and then we run it through the community to kind of get additional input to refine it and then come back for a final draft versus.
In our RFP, those are one of the things in that,
Yeah.
21 things that we've got in.
Yeah.
Posted
At
about all
our
this stuff.
last policy meeting, I threw out the
An
concept of volunteer auxiliary. And I wrote a proposal that talks about the benefits and when we get down to engagement of the community, I'll share it with you, but it's basically how to reach out to the community involved in the district functions and operations.
Well, and that, I mean, I think that the legwork that we're doing on this is very good, especially aligning that with our strategic planning process, because I think that will help, you know, 'cause I don't think we necessarily need to finalize this policy until we move through the strategic plan, because maybe as the goals and strategies come out of the strategic plan will help define, okay, who are we really looking for to help us as expert advisors and that process. So we'll do more, some more legwork with it and bring back some.
Hope we gave you some homework, check with legal, check with HR, get,
Absolutely. I just would like to hear it from the committee. not
Yeah.
just from her.
yeah.
I think
We're in agreement with that,
Okay.
to speak to you.
I was just confirming that that was what I understood that the committee was agreeing to.
Okay, I had just heard you say it, so I just
No.
wanted to hear from you. So thank you.
Good. Are we done with that subject and we'll move on to number 3?
Yes, go ahead, Gary.
Sure. All right, the next policy that we have, some minor updates for BOD 17, which is the compensation and performance evaluation of the chief executive officer. I'm on page 60 of the.
Thank you. Thank you.
And what we added in this was bullet point number 6. Here, on page 61. So what we've added is that the human resource consultant shall conduct a performance assessment of staff who directly report to the CEO. Performance assessment shall be confidential and submitted to the district's legal counsel. This is in line with what we're currently doing to get that additional feedback as part of the normal process. So that was bullet point 6 was added, and then on the following evaluation, besides a few minor language updates, it was also to incorporate that same element into it.
Any discussion?
Can you go back up there, please? So after it's submitted to the district's legal counsel, what happens?
Then-
It comes to us, no?
Yeah, so
That's in there.
the board shall prepare input on the CEO board input evaluation form. Oh, maybe it's actually in the actual process down below where it says that all information is collected by the.
Because
It
when
was
I,
on number-
when,
was on-
when we started doing this
Oh, up and down, down.
evaluation, Chris, you know that I don't think it's
External and
fair for the CEO to be assessed on possibly negatively by some of his staff if the staff doesn't agree with the person's way of doing business. So
I'm sorry, can you repeat
that here I could see that it's a tool for the CEO to use. And to be able to change or, you know, to be able to just use it as a tool for him or herself. But I don't think that it should come to us because I know that the reason why this was created was because, you know, you said that you wouldn't mind it coming to the board. But that is, I think it could be a problem if it is a tool that is given to the board. It just seems like
Why do you see it as a problem?
because if I am your employee and if I don't like the fact that you told me no on my idea and I critique you negatively because I don't think that you're being nice to me, then if I'm doing this and maybe you do that to more than just me, I know it's a tool for you to understand that maybe you need to work on communication with that person. But for us to then make, for me as a board member, to have that information that is part of your job, because my job is not to manage your staff, my job is to manage you. So giving more power to the staff than usually boards get. But at the same time, the flip side of it is when we get those evaluations that ask us about, is your team motivated? Is your team given every opportunity to be leaders? We always say NA because we don't know you. You're not.
Right, and
So-
that's,
So that's this is all about talking, right? And so that's the flip side of it, is that, so
Something like that.
I was just wondering what happens after it goes to district legal counsel that,
well, we can add in there another sentence then that becomes part of the package that goes to the board. Because that,
Cause
I mean, I see what you're saying, but I also, the flip side of it is there's so much that the board should understand. And you as a board member can take or leave whatever is coming through the staff component. I mean, like that example that you just gave is, is the employee upset because they were told no about something? You can look at that and say, you know what, I don't need to evaluate the CEO on that. That's, with the CEO and the staff. However, if there's something that's coming from staff that is a potential legal concern, potential ethics concern, you're hearing that from the staff that reports to the CEO. Otherwise, you don't hear that information as a board member and don't have that opportunity to evaluate the CEO on that information.
I don't see a problem with it right now because you're okay with it because you're in that position. Okay, but this is not something that is usually in a contract in an organization where the CEO gets evaluated based on that part of it. That's not typical. Okay, so that's why I'm just trying to reconcile it and that you're okay with it. Now let's do it for as long as Chris is in this position. He's okay with it. We get information that we normally wouldn't get.
I think it should be for every CEO. not
No,
just me.
it's not, because again, I said that you have the right to do the job. That you feel, that these are the people, I'm gonna manage them, this is my style. And then if they don't like it, it's not for them to change your style. It's for as long as you're in that position, you get to determine the environment of the organization. And so, yeah, I don't think very many CEOs would go for that. Okay, maybe
Well,
some of them would,
I
but
would
that's not the
agree.
norm. That's
Me-
not the norm.
Me selfishly, I wouldn't want it either. For the organization, I think it should be.
Okay,
I
again,
think we could have avoided, personally, I think we could have avoided some situations with previous CEOs had there been
Exactly,
prior staff engagement.
exactly.
I have known many city managers that go into the position and they know that the typical life cycle of a CEO of a city manager is 5 years max. Okay, some of them are like a David Reddy that could be in there for 27 years, but there's others that only last 1 year. Because you go in there and you have the most difficult part of the job is managing people. Okay, how do you get them out of them what you want, what you need to, accomplish your goals? So I know that is the environment that I come from in the bureaucracy world. And so it's not the free market, it's not that, that's and that is, and again, if you're okay with this, it's fine, because we're getting information that we normally wouldn't get, and we could do with that information what we will.
Actually,
But-
absolutely.
but I
It
just know
exposes
that
the
that's not-
CEO. But That's what it should be,
Mhm.
because the CEO should not, you as the director, if I'm a director and I'm needing to evaluate the CEO that reports to the board, and I don't have a perspective other than what I see the CEO doing, and there's things that could be part of evaluation purposes for the CEO and recommendations, I think the CEO should be evaluated.
to blend with staff,
so-
yeah. Well, having sat through 3 CEOs on this district, I think it's really important to hear from staff about.
This year's process, going through it, with having this component in there, it did open up my eyes a lot. The information that in the past I didn't have. So it is helpful. I do not disagree with that. But I'm saying that you're okay with it, but this is not typical, okay? And this is what makes it a little bit uncomfortable for me, is that, I'm done with.
Other directors?
And any other input?
I guess I recall Jeff saying at one time that we're not a huge Fortune 500 company. I remember him saying that, and we are a small group of 12. Now, maybe if we were larger and once we do expand the strategic plan, I may, agree with that, but we are a small, tight knit group.
And not every company is the same.
So would this take the place of the annual review that we do?
No, it just adds to it.
It's a staff component.
Yeah, that's the staff level component to it, for the CEO.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
You're evaluating.
You're
their-
evaluating.
Your
Yeah.
evaluation of the CEO.
And then that
Part
information
of the board
goes to the board.
review.
The
Right.
first part of it, I think is absolutely great. You get that information from your staff to help you assess your work and how to be able to reconcile. But the second part of it, that's what makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm sorry, I said I was gonna say anything else. I just needed to clarify that.
So maybe, I think maybe that sentence really needs to be restructured to conduct a performance assessment of the CEO by staff who directly report to him or her.
Oh, shall conduct a performance assessment of staff.
Changes.
Yeah,
in-
but I think
changes in
that's what, yeah, I think that's what kind of made my thought process think that it was Chris
I
assessing.
see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Dangling participle.
Yeah, so I think just kind of restructuring it so it reads that the CEO will have a performance assessment by staff who directly report to
Yeah,
him or her.
changes in
Okay.
chat.
Yeah, that's fine. You can add
Or
that.
staff who directly report to the CEO will perform an assessment of the CEO.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, any
That's
more
okay.
comments? Shall we move on to number 4?
Can we agree with it being like
You need
that?
to-
or was
have a
there-
motion.
Well,
You
we're
just need to vote.
vote, because it is action. So we're voting to send it to the board for approval.
I will make a motion that I will move approval to, and it's probably gonna be a failed motion, but I'll make it anyways, that to move it forward, but to remove the second sentence of that.
Which is. It shall be confidential, submitted to legal counsel. So HR would submit it directly to who?
To the CEO.
I mean, I think the
I think it
CEO
defeats the
already
purpose.
gets a copy of it, don't you?
No,
Mm.
that's why we
It goes
wanted to
straight
do
the
it
board.
completely confidential. So that the CEO, so that the staff then has the freedom and the ability to have confidence that their comments aren't going directly to the CEO. So that they don't feel intimidated or anything like that. That they're going to
Oh, so
be.
that's the process of that. So they're, for it to go somewhere else so that it becomes anonymous.
Exactly.
But-
But then that way they have. the
Could it be,
freedom
go to
freedom.
HR then? Could it be?
Well, HR is completing the assessment and then it's going
To
to,
that person.
to legal counsel. And then and that, to me, if it were me, I would want to add an additional sentence then from legal counsel would then go to the board as part of the review packet.
It's totally
And
confidential.
totally confidential from the CEO so that the staff
And
can
there's-
have that confidence that
There
they
will
can.
be no
speak
retribution,
openly.
right.
Exactly.
Can I
Because if
say
it goes directly to the CEO, then staff's gotta have concern that, I gotta be careful what I say, so that there's no retaliation.
I made the motion that I said, and I do want to get a second, but
Okay, can I have another motion?
Can you ask
I
for a
think you have to
second?
vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Okay, there being no second, can we have another motion? I can make a motion, I make a motion to approve and move to the board with some of the syntax corrections that we discussed.
And also adding that from the legal counsel, it would be submitted to the board as part of the review packet.
Right, as we discussed.
I
Is there-
second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose.
I abstain.
You can abstain.